Once again, I'm not going to audio edit this much because I can't be bothered to. This is the most effort I can put into this. Deal with it. So this is All Engines Go, episode 2, Thomas Blasts Off. There are a bunch of things I didn't talk about in the first episode because, oh my god, it was difficult to make it through. This episode was not an easy watch either, but I got through it because I uh, powered through it, I guess. It just wasn't as hard this time. So, the few things that I actually did not bring up from episode 1, the music sequences. There's a little ditty where Thomas sings about making it through, and then about doing his job and doing a good job of it. Diesel even does it once. It's just this quick little ditty. And it reminded me that there was a very quick turnaround time for this series when it came out. And my God, does it show, because it felt very rushed. Um, was that all? Did I already talked about the physics, but in this episode, Thomas and friends are tasked with bringing parts of a rocket ship to Brendam Docks, where Cranky, the only tolerable character, is. It was nice seeing Cranky. I like Cranky. He's one of the few TV exclusive characters that doesn't piss me off to any end. I love Cranky. He's a good guy. But that little synopsis that I gave of this episode is basically all that needs to be said of the plot. And it's not really all that substantive outside of that. Now, what am I going to ramble your ear off for the next however many minutes? Well, I actually have some. I'm going to have to actually be kind of unfair. And I'm going to have to talk about Thomas the Tank Engine, the first season. Like, I'm not doing this to compare and contrast. I just want to talk about the character relationships because I feel that the nuances of the relationships in Thomas the Tank Engine are really lost on people. So in season 1, the two main characters are Thomas, who is the main protagonist, and Gordon, who is the deuteragonist. Gordon is only the deuteragonist for season 1 because after. We're actually going to get to that. Midway through season 1, Percy gets introduced into the series as a result of a labor strike spearheaded by the tender engines because of the Fat Controller's unsafe railway practices and his bias towards Thomas. And then Percy gets introduced, and basically Percy becomes the deuteragonist after season 2 until the series ends. Why does this happen? Well, it happens because, number 1, they didn't know if they were going to be brought back for a season 2. So what they did with season 1 was that they just focused on telling a complete story. Like, the overarching narrative in season 1 is how Thomas and Gordon become friends. And Thomas's friendship with Gordon is like one of the few things that the series truly has continuity with. Because after like their feud and their subsequent reconciliation, Thomas never really fucks with Gordon ever again. He only really fucks with him in that first season, and then that's it. And that's kind of the thing with Thomas as a character. He's not really friends with anyone else there. For as much as the series turned into Thomas and Friends after season 1, the only genuine friend and friendship that ever developed between him and another cast member is legitimately his relationship with Gordon. He he and James don't really get along. He is only really friends with Henry on the down low. Like they share gossip with each other. Like Edward, he's a very distant friend to Thomas. Like he's just kind of a mentor. Percy, they're not he's not even really friends with Percy. He's not even really friends with Toby, and it's funny because Toby and Percy were basically this trio. Thomas was the mean one, Percy was the nice one, and Toby was their in between. And it was funny because Toby was legitimately friends with Percy, but they weren't really friends with Thomas. He just happened to fall into their social group somehow. And and this brings me to Thomas and Percy's friendship, or their quote unquote friendship, because they're not really friends. It's funny how in like the nitrogen era, very early nitrogen era, they're really gunning for you to believe that Thomas and Percy are best friends when that never ever happened. Like this is a very recent development, Thomas and Percy's quote unquote best friendship. Like Thomas and Percy, they feud with each other on the semi regular. Like they pull pranks on each other, and like one of the most infamous instances of this is Percy pretending to be a ghost and scaring the living shit out of Thomas in that one Halloween-esque episode. Ghost Train, I think it was what it was called. But that's the reason Thomas and Percy's friendship became kind of a selling point of the series, because let's be real with ourselves, they blew their load with Thomas and Gordon's friendship way too early. What do I mean by this? I mean, I think it's pretty self-evident what I mean. Season 1, because of its intention to tell a complete story, ends with Thomas and Gordon becoming friends. Therefore, the arc is complete. There's no reason for you to have these two feuding because they have reconciled. That's why season 1 pretty much ends in the middle of the Thomas and Gordon becoming friends arc. And that's why the last story only gets adapted in season 4. Because they didn't know whether they were going to be able to continue producing more Thomas the Tank Engine. But them choosing to tell a complete story was not good for the health of the series in the long run, because now they lost one of the most important relationships that they could still derive conflict from, which was Thomas and Gordon's relationship. And I think that says something about art under capitalism, that it says something about art under capitalism that they had to basically have Thomas and Percy's friendship become the focal point of the entire series, and they never really truly become friends. I mean, they fuck with each other a bunch, but it's not really in the same way that Thomas and Gordon became friends. Like, that was a friendship forged through fire, turmoil, and like a mutual understanding of each other. Like they reference the Thomas and Gordon becoming friends things in seasons 1, but you kind of do just get the impression that they just don't have that much more to say about that specific friendship. And that friendship, or that the build up to that friendship was such a source of conflict that it makes season 1 just a very one of Thomas's best seasons interpersonal wise. Like for his interpersonal relationships, it makes Thomas such a compelling and strong character because he gets to be wrong. He gets to feud, and Gordon gets to be wrong. He gets to feud. Like it's this beautiful cycle of harmony between the two that ultimately ends up in them becoming friends. And that never really happens for Thomas and Percy, which kind of makes their relationship in All Engines Go that much more weird because it's not really building off any of the canon material that's been established between the two. It's just pushing Gordon into a mentorship role that, quite frankly, he wasn't designed for. You know who this mentorship role was designed for? It was designed for Edward. That was the role he sort of shifted into, but not really. He still had episodes that were about his personal struggles as an outdated express engine in the modern year of 1920s, 1930s Sodor at the time. But he doesn't get to give up his character just to be a mentor, which is unfortunately what happens to Gordon. There are so many interesting things about his character that just get stripped away because he's dealing with an entirely different version of characters that he's dealing with an entirely different cast, and he can't be that pompous jackass show-off anymore. He can't be that co-worker that you fucking hate and want to punch in the face, but serves such an important role in the ecosystem of the workplace that you can't fucking get rid of him. He can't be that fucking jackass anymore, and that makes me sad. And Thomas and Percy's friendship can't be this fucking sibling rivalry ostensibly, and that makes me sad. It makes me sad to think that the nuances of these relationships have basically been scrubbed away because they wanted to reduce this series to just white noise for your fucking children. Children deserve better than this. The Reverend Audrey knew this. Is there anything else to say? I don't know if Duck is in this series. He has apparently like a model made for him based on his adult self in the original show, which is funny considering Duck's most important relationship in the original series is his feud with Diesel. It said so much about him and Diesel too as people, and now Diesel's just a fucking kid. I mean, if they ever put Duck in this series, he's not gonna be able to be that same bastard that he was in the original series, that morally upright co-worker who you fucking hate, but he does his job and is good at doing his job. Like Gordon is this pompous jackass show-off who's good at his job. And Duck is a prideful bastard. He's such a prideful fucking bastard. But he's so principled that you can't help but, like, admire the guy. But you also don't want to work with him. People loved and respected Gordon so much that he was a status symbol. He was this figure that all the other engines wanted to emulate and look up to, at least when he used to be like the fastest thing on wheels. And as the series goes, he stopped being the fastest thing on wheels. But it's okay because the march of time and the railway's relationship with advancing technology is also one of the major themes of the series. There's so much commentary on the passage of time and how we grow, learn, change as people, that All Engines Go simply cannot live up to that legacy. I don't know, it's just kind of sad. I've spent the vast majority of this one talking about Thomas the Tank Engine, I had like a minute about All Engines Go. This is what I'm talking about. I'm not being fucking fair to All Engines Go when I do this shit. It's unfair as almighty fuck that I could write an entire diegesis and possibly even like go on for 3 more hours about the complex workings of the sociological nature of the relationships in the Railway series / Thomas the Tank Engine. But I don't have jack shit to say about All Engines Go. I'm not being fair. This is unfair and I don't like it. But I'm gonna finish this series out. I'm just gonna call it here for this episode because I don't want to continue being unfair. Thanks for listening if you did.